cannot hug each other right now. But services have still been going on. We've had the opportunity to listen to other ministers because people have changed their time. So if we're at 9 o'clock, we can listen at TJ at 11 o'clock. We can listen at somebody else at 10 o'clock. We've trimmed down the services. So that's another thing we found out. We don't have to sing 8 songs before the pastor get up to preach. We don't have to pray a long prayer. So the pandemic has shown us a lot of things, that we can still worship God. We can still hear each other's voice, and not necessarily be inside the church. But we are ready to go back inside the church when everybody is vaccinated, where we can actually hug one another. We can kiss each other on the cheek. That's one of the main things that my older people have missed. But serving God goes on.
Reverend Walker, what has Ebenezer been doing as far as meeting during this pandemic time?
Well, at first we completely shut down until we took maybe 2 months into COVID before we started to plan around how do we still worship amidst the pandemic. And we went into our outdoor services. People could drive up on the parking lot, and we've got a stage in the parking lot, and had everything set up. As Harris was saying, we had, virtual setups to where you could worship, live stream, whether it's YouTube, Facebook, whatever social media outlet you preferred. But the outdoor services, we were outdoor probably until it got cold, maybe October, November-ish. Once the weather changed, we went back inside. And when we first came inside, we went into just a live recording where we pre-recorded the services. And, once we rolled into the new year, we kind of began to slowly come back indoors. So now we're back full-fledged now with 2 services, 8 o'clock and 11 o'clock. Still live stream. People still have that option. And a lot of people, they're, as they should be, still, pretty conservative about the virus, not comfortable with coming into church, which is no problem at all. But for those that are comfortable to come back, we have that option available. We just went to 2 services in order to make sure that we could space everyone out and have time in between to sanitize and clean the sanctuary, but also still providing that social media presence for individuals who don't feel comfortable.
Excuse me. So I'm here to tell you about how these people are joining your Zoom. Your Google Meet. So when I was trying to make a Google Meet with my friend, and I was typing in Google Meet because I finna make a Google Meet with my friend. And I clicked on a link, and it sent me here because I thought I was the one to make a meet. So I was just telling you how people are getting in here.
Thank you for letting me know.
Yeah. That's how I got in here.
Well, if you all don't want to stay, I could remove you, or you could leave, but you're welcome to stay if you wish to.
I want to stay to listen how you all are doing in life and how's it going.
Okay. Just remember, it's going to be scholarly discussion. So moving on with that, I'll try to remember. I'm not sure why people are just randomly getting in. I'm trying to be careful about who I let in and who comes in. I'm starting to where I'm just saying no to a lot of things. So we may be getting some people who may be needing to be in are not getting in. So back onto our topic. We do have a discussion that for those who may wish to share some thoughts about some of the things that have been said. I don't want to just aim all the questions at Reverend Walker and Ms. Harris, or just let them talk the whole time. I will share some things. I know part of diversity is finding out how we're similar. And I know that religion is a big part of how we're similar. And a lot of the things I was hearing Reverend Walker and Ms. Harris saying are things that my little country white church has done. We had a Facebook presence before the pandemic started. But we have got, it has been much more visible. We do Zoom calls in the middle of the week, just and prayer meetings by Zoom, which can be kind of strange. But I would be curious to hear from some folks who are here. How have your churches been handling the pandemic? I know for mine, Brattleboro United Methodist Church, we just went back into our sanctuary at Easter, for Easter, and that was the first time we had been there. And it was big. It had a lot of attendance, I think, just because we were back in the sanctuary. But we've kind of lost people. And I would be curious to hear not only from Reverend Walker and Ms. Harris, but how has church changed for people who maybe are not in leadership positions, just people who want to go?
Well, Carol, that's part of the reason that they're having services. When it's on Facebook Live, anybody that's a friend or a friend of a friend has the opportunity to enjoy the service. Even when my husband preaches from our home, he set his office up like he's in a church. He's got his podium and everything, but it's offered to anyone who wants to join or to listen. So when I post it, I make sure I put the telephone number because we have people from different places who call in and listen to the service, or when we have Bible study, they're able to listen in and to witness. It's offered to anyone who just wants to dial the number. Sometimes their church may not be having midweek service, and they want that, so they're able to call into ours or to many others. I've seen several of them around, especially in Edgecombe County. Lots of people are doing the very same thing and making sure that outside of your church, they also have the ability to call in and take part.
Well, I would just say that my husband and I have been sort of searching for a right fit since we've moved down here. And we have spent some time in the Catholic Church, where both of us were raised, and the Episcopal Church, and a Pentecostal church. And what's really interesting that I have found is that each one of these faith traditions has handled it completely differently. The Catholic Church is meeting, but there's no more exchange of the handshake that is part of the ritual of the Mass, and everyone is seated a pew between, so every other pew people are seated. The Episcopal Church is not meeting face to face at all, but is doing like online service. And the Pentecostal Church is meeting face to face and online. And they are having people come and visit those who aren't comfortable being in crowds. So they're having people just, visit you in your home. So I think it's really interesting to see the way different faith traditions are handling it. I'm not saying any one is better than the other or right or wrong. It's just interesting.
Yeah. So I'm curious to hear Reverend Walker, Miss Harris. Have your congregations lost anyone due to COVID?
Yes.
And how did the congregation deal with that?
Well, you know, as a choir member, minister's wife, elected official, I go to hundreds of funerals every year. Well, during the pandemic, you know, that was reduced. My husband, being a pastor, had to go. And, you know, a lot of the funeral homes, they limit how many people can be there. If you have it at a church, you know, it was limited. And so he had to make sure he had his mask. They check your temperature. And so it's been difficult to lose some of our members and close friends and not be able to attend because of COVID. So instead of 100 funerals last year, I went to 3. And those were immediate families where I knew exactly only 50 people could attend. I went to one, and somebody I had known a long time. The church was full. I was anxious. I sat at the back of the choir stand because there are no longer any choirs singing at the funerals. Well, I sat there alone because I felt there was just too many people. And it was like, they're not following the guidelines. And I'm really about following those guidelines. If he said you're only supposed to have 50, I want 50. So I tried to make sure that I was spaced away from the family, spaced away from anybody else. And that's just an anxious feeling that these are folks you know, but you've got to be safe, even though you want to say your goodbyes.
Reverend Walker, I was going to ask, did Ebenezer lose any?
No, ma'am, we didn't lose any immediate congregants, but there were loss to some of our members, family members that may not have been members of the church, but they have family members that died due to COVID. And many of those were individuals that had pre-existing or underlying conditions and, contracted the COVID virus and able to combine with their conditions. But we've been blessed here not to have any deaths due to COVID from church members. So we've dodged that bullet so far, and we're praying that we'll just continue to stay safe with it.
I know I will speak. I had originally had Pastor Kim Lale from Brattleboro and McKendree churches, but after she got fully vaccinated, she flew away. So I wanted to kind of share kind of a balanced perspective, which is why I keep kind of pitching in a little. We did not in the congregations that the United Methodist congregations that Pastor Lale serves, that are in a community and then a rural setting. We did not lose anybody to COVID, but we did have a family member, one of our leaders' family member passed, and several of our members actually fought it and actually knew people. And it really, and we had several people as well who had underlying conditions who then became kind of afraid to come to church. And one of the things that Pastor Kim communicated to me was, she said, I wonder if we will get people back into the church or the churches in the sanctuary, if we keep doing the Facebook Live, if we keep putting our services on YouTube, so that if they can't make it, but they want to watch it, 2:30 a.m. on a Wednesday, they can do it. Do you, Reverend Walker, Ms. Harris, do y'all think the social media presences will continue once things start opening back up and getting back to normal?
I know for my husband's church, it will, because not only has the congregants, been able to utilize it, but he's had friends, classmates who don't even live here, who've enjoyed seeing, the services and being able to. So he has already decided that he's going to continue to utilize those services. But he told his congregation, because we actually went back in Easter Sunday morning. He told them, because I print off every time we have a service. So he knows the people who are on the conference call. He knows the people who are on Facebook. So he advised them that, he knows that some of them enjoyed it. Some are still not ready to come back. But he said, don't make me have to cut it off because you decide you're going to stay home and listen at it instead of coming into the sanctuary. So he's going to be, watching that just to see if we have a lot of congregants who just decide they're just going to stay home and listen at it this Sunday.
Yeah, definitely. I echo those sentiments from Commissioner Harris. We too will continue our virtual approach, and that has a lot to do with just the time and ages that we're in now. Social media is driving a lot of that's pretty much the media we have now, and people have a lot of convenience to it. So we won't stop it. As a matter of fact, we're working every week to try to enhance it out other methods we can use because as Commissioner Harris stated, it gives you a broader reach than you could ever have in your sanctuary. You're able to touch those that can't be here. So, and that's from anywhere in the world. So you just never know who you can reach, who you can minister to by way of social media. So we're going to just continue to enhance ours and figure out how we can maximize all of our social media outlets.
So I'm interested in hearing from some of the folks who are listening in, if you can. I'm curious to hear, which do you prefer? Do we and why? Do we prefer the Facebook Live? Do we prefer the streaming, or do we need to be in church?
Well, this is Greg Horn, and if you allow me to chime in, I'd just like to say good afternoon. I find the discussion to be very, very interesting, very enlightening. Um, Myself, along with my wife and our daughter, we pastor an outreach ministry, which we have been in existence for a little bit over 5 years. And we've primarily been doing our ministry through social media. We've had a few people that would come to our home. We haven't been in a building for the past 5 years, and we did have a few people that was coming to our homes on Sundays and Wednesday nights. And when the pandemic hit, or when the COVID hit, of course, we shut that down. So we found that social media has been working for us um, all along. Social media, and combined with the conference call that Commissioner Harris was talking about, um, and it's just been working for us even before um, we had to quote unquote shut things down, so to speak. So, and as I heard Commissioner Harris say that her husband was going to continue that, and I think that's a good thing because, as she stated, and as others have stated, um, for some it's convenient. I think about some of the people who we reach out to are kind of elderly. They are not as mobile. They can't get around. So just having the opportunity to um, have the gospel kind of piped into their home has been a blessing. So in a way, This COVID thing has been a curse. In a way, it has really been a blessing. And I believe that that's how God works. He'll take whatever is available and use it to his benefit and to his good. So I just wanted to share that, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for sharing, Pastor Horn. We appreciate you joining in with us this afternoon.
Carol,
Yes, Susie.
may I chime in for just a moment?
Absolutely.
First, thank you for the opportunity to be here, and I want to thank Jennifer for allowing me to be on the panel in the next discussion. One of the things that Ms. Harris, as well as Mr. Horn, said, that we have the opportunity to bring the gospel to folks that perhaps would not have the opportunity. And currently I am doing a women's Bible study from my home. I do it on Thursday evenings. I have a person who is from South Carolina. I have a person from Kansas. I have a person from Philadelphia. So this would not be possible if we were just meeting in my small church in Snow Hill, North Carolina. And so for God to bring those women together, we all learn from one another and our different backgrounds, and we all bring different perspectives. And so I appreciate that so very much. Again, our church has not been physically together until Easter Sunday morning, and what a glorious morning that was, just to see folks again. To the point of the church, the church also does mission, and we have mission work not just here in the United States, but mission abroad as well. And I had 3 different mission trips scheduled for last year in 2020, and all 3, of course, were canceled. The reason that we do mission trips is not only to spread the gospel, but also to help those who are in need, whether that's emotional or physical or spiritual. And to have all 3 of those trips canceled has just been devastating for me. I'm so ready to get on a plane and go somewhere. I can't begin to tell you. But we have to recognize that although our lives have been kind of put into an upheaval, I ask us to remember our brothers and sisters globally and what those needs are. And if those needs were bad then, imagine what those needs are now. One of the trips that I go on routinely is a medical mission to a small clinic and hospital. And she took a kind of a panoramic picture of what the pharmacy looked like. The cupboards are bare. You couldn't get an aspirin right now if you needed it. And so it brings to mind that our lives have been upset, as it were. But we do and are recovering, as it were. But hopefully soon we will be able to help those abroad. And we'll talk more about that in the next hour with the medical conditions of things, and the vaccine, and perhaps a hesitancy to get the vaccine. One of the things that I tell my students pretty regularly is that we are one plane ride away from the next pandemic. And I wish I were wrong. I don't think that I am. And so if there is someone on the planet who has COVID or a variant thereof, or measles or whooping cough or anything else, it opens the door for that to come back to the United States. And so we'll be looking at that in the next hour. But I thank you for letting me, third hour. I apologize for the third hour. Thank you, Carol. So I just kind of wanted to chime in on that as well.
Susie, I would love if you would send me the information about your women's Bible study.
Me too.
Yeah, that sounds great, Miss Susie and Miss Carol, and to the others that participate on the call. I just wanted you all to see Pastor is actually here in the office, so I wanted to stop by and allow him to greet you all as we were continuing this conversation.
What a massive honor. Reverend Dr. Walker, we welcome you to our Facebook, to our Google Meet.
Yes. Well, I'm very happy to chime in on it, and I really appreciate the things that I've heard. And of course, I know social media and it's meant a lot during this pandemic, and the churches reaching out to touch their members and community. It's certainly prove a worthy thing. Uh, might I say, while we are talking, however, I want to really appreciate the role that we've been able to play with getting the vaccinations, working with the health departments. Primarily, we worked through Nash County, but also Edgecombe County. We reached out to them also, and OIC, and it seems that that process is going very well. And we hope that we don't run into any bottlenecks. We know what the report is on the Johnson product, but we hope that we can continue to flow and get people to get their shots.
And we thank you for all that you've been able to do in the community. You know, a lot of people, I think it's they need a COVID shot, but they need Jesus too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we always
but,
need Jesus.
yeah, well, I certainly I do not see them as being different objectives. Many times we found out, I found in my years of preaching, that something may not be an end, but a means to an end. And it is very important that the church understand our first commission was to go into all the world and preach the gospel. The gospel is Jesus Christ, but then Jesus Christ is service to humanity. And so all of this has connected. Who would have thought would be where we are? But God has somehow rebooted the church so that we understand that our work is not reserved just to be within the four walls, but in the community, and that's what we see has happened and is happening.
Yes, sir. So I'm curious to hear from both of the pastors of Ebenezer, from Commissioner Harris, First Lady Harris. How has the ministry itself changed because of the pandemic? Not just, you know, doing Facebook Live, and how has the ministry changed?
Well, I've noticed my husband's only been a pastor for 7 years, but I've noticed how God has really poured into him during this pandemic. I've seen his ministry really, really grow. Having been married to him for the past 41 years, I can tell the difference. And I can see the work that God has really been doing with him during this pandemic. It's just been building him. He's gotten stronger. And I believe that he's been able to reach people a lot better over this last year. It's been difficult. He actually lost his one and only sister to COVID a year ago. And for us not to be able to travel there to the funeral, but to have his 101-year-old mother to be able to be in our sanctuary and us be able to watch the funeral on Facebook Live, it just told us how God can work in mysterious ways. And but yes, I've seen him really, really grow stronger during this pandemic. And it's just that it just shows you how God can use, he can use you at the time that you need to be used.
I'm going to let Pastor answer that one, Ms. Carol.
Okay, well, you know, none of us have seen anything quite like this pandemic in our lifetime. However, for my past 50 years as pastors, I've seen both some good and some of course, some challenging things that have come out of this. Um, it has caused us to understand the urgency of the involvement of the church, that we have to really reach out and let the people in the community know that we're here for them, and they bring with them many needs. They are spiritual and they are physical and emotional needs. And so the church actually has, it's been a teachable moment, believe it or not, for the church, even though one would think the church would already know the broadness of our ministry. Well, if we had any doubt, this pandemic has removed the veil and let us see that we have a broad ministry. We have a broad constituents that transcends even racial barriers. It is a whosoever will pandemic, and we have responded in that way. We must continue to respond in that way.
I was still muted. My fault. Reverend Dr. Walker, just thank you for that very thoughtful response. I had a question come in that I really wanted to address, especially after Ms. Harris touched on something that was it was a ceremonial part. She's mentioned it twice, that thinking about what effects have the pandemic had on things like funerals or baptisms or even weddings?
We haven't done any weddings. We haven't done any baptisms. We've only done a few funerals, and those were someone from the church or an immediate family member of the church. And making sure we did all the guidelines, checked everybody's temperature before they came in. The ushers had their gloves. They made sure they checked temperatures. If you didn't have a mask on, you couldn't come in. They gave you one. They were seated every other pew. If you were families, you sat together. So they made sure they followed the guidelines for funerals. Most of the funerals we've had, though, have been at the funeral home, and they've followed the same guidelines and limited the number of people who could actually attend.
I'm not sure if Reverend Walker, I think Reverend Walker's in motion here.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I'm actually headed to Pastor's. We're in the office there, but I'm headed to pick up my boys from school. But we've been in the same vein that Commissioner Harris just spoke of. We've had funerals for congregants. We've had a few exceptions for individuals that are somewhat pioneers or community leaders. We've had a couple of those situations where they just needed to use the space of the church. But as far as anything beyond funerals, we haven't had anything else to occur ceremonial in the church.
And if anyone in the meeting has seen how other faith communities dealt with that, I would love to hear from it. I know one thing that has been a challenge at my church, at Brattleboro United Methodist. We actually got a new pastor in the middle of the pandemic. She did not preach in our sanctuary until Easter. She didn't and for about the first month of her pastorate with us, she was outside. we were lucky enough that it moved inside. We moved inside once it got cold. And I asked her, Pastor Kim, how that was, how that was different for her. And she said, it's been very strange to have congregants that she's never met, because some people, it's sort of like they just kind of dropped out. And I hope that has not happened with Leggett Chapel, or with Ebenezer, or with any of the other communities around. The thing that Pastor Kim said to me was connection. She said that it's not just staying connected with the pastor, it's staying connected with the people in the church. How have the people in your churches stayed connected?
Well, I've had to do a lot of the connecting. I have the list of the congregants, and make sure that I call, especially our eldest members. I try to make sure that I call them and contact them at least every 2 weeks. And my husband gives time before he preaches or starts Bible study. He gives everyone an opportunity on the conference call to give a comment, to let us know how they're doing, if they have any needs, and that kind of thing before we even start the actual service. So that's how we've been keeping in touch. Christmas time, of course, I sat down and wrote every single member of the church a Christmas card, made sure we mailed that, followed up anybody that was sick, because you couldn't go to the hospital. We tried to make sure we called them on the telephone. And that's mainly how we've been engaged. We've also asked, like the Mothers Ministry, each one of them to call each one of them. The choir members, each one of them, keep in contact with them. Different ministries of the church, we've asked them to take ownership, and because they have each other's telephone numbers, that they can call each other and keep in touch. Because, my husband, even though he's a pastor, he also works a full-time job. He cannot do it all by himself. So it took all of us to try to keep in touch with one another. And we've had a few who haven't called anybody, haven't shown up for driving services or anything else. And all we can do for them is continue to pray.
And on that note, I would say too that one of the ways our church has been keeping everybody informed about everyone else's prayer chains. So just about everybody in this one little small church that we go to is on a prayer chain. And so, we get prayer requests all the time via text messages on our phone.
So, Katie, I want to share something, unless Susie wants to share something too.
Just briefly, if I may, Carol.
Absolutely.
What we're talking about as far as how things have changed, I sing a lot of weddings and funerals and things of that nature. I have not done a wedding in a year. I have done 3 funerals, all of them very small, 10 people max in the building, and 2 of them graveside. So there wasn't even a service within the facility, if that makes sense. Everything was just at graveside. The one thing that I think the pandemic has probably shown all of us, both from a social aspect as well as a religious aspect, is that I do feel like we have learned a bit about what is more important. And especially when you talk about weddings and how big they can be and the life that they can kind of take in and of themselves. At the end of the day, you're just as married, whether you went to the courthouse or you had a very small ceremony in your parents' backyard or things like that. I think we have a tendency to focus too much on the pageantry, perhaps, of the whole event versus what's supposed to be important about that event. And I think funerals can be guilty of this as well. What's important is that we understand that this person has gone home, that we know whose they are and where they're going. We do want to pay our respects, but what we is most important, of course, is that we understand where they are. And I think, especially when it was Easter Sunday morning and I could finally hug a neck because I'd had both shots. I think we just have learned to appreciate one another and how we are a community of people, and that how much we are interdependent upon one another and how much we need one another. And I think sometimes that we get carried away with that other stuff, as it were, rather than focusing on what's most important about these events in particular.
So there was a question here that anyone in a pastoral way can answer, or a lay leader affiliated way. It said religious entities still need monetary assistance to thrive. Ms. LaShonda Washington said that her church uses the Givelify app as a means to give financial support. Are there creative ways that you can give to churches? How are we still getting the tithes, folks?
Well, as far as we are down in Leggett, our trustees are out there every Saturday from 10 to noon. And then they're out there on Sundays for another couple of hours. And so they send an email or text to the membership telling them these are the times that you have that you can come out. If you need prayer or if you just want to leave your tithes and offerings, they're going to be there at that time each Saturday and each Sunday.
And we have we utilize Givelify, we utilize Cash App. We have a Dropbox that's built into the exterior of the church where you can drop your funds off in the Dropbox, and they will be secured inside the church once it drops in. And also Venmo and Zelle, different apps that you can use to give virtually or in a more convenient manner to the church. But we've created other ways. Like I said, we've used the time. We had virtual methods before COVID, but we use this to really use this time to really maximize our virtual efforts.
So I see that Reverend Kenny Parker has joined the call under the guise of Dean Phillips. Reverend Parker, what can you add to our conversation?
Okay, first of all, I apologize. Forgive me. Thank you. I am able to join you. I'm delighted, first of all, again, to be invited to be a part of this dialogue. And I think I would assume at this juncture you're talking about religion in the time and during the pandemic?
Yes.
Good, good. Okay, real quickly, and I'll be as brief as I possibly can. This pandemic has, in fact, again, it's been stated, forestated, Dr. McLeod this morning, all of you have all chimed in and added to how we are no longer where we used to be. If what happened had not happened when it happened, what has happened would not be happened in terms of we are now at a time and place we've never been. This too shall pass, we'll get through it. As relate to how we get through it, this morning I heard several comments that are reflective of where we are in terms of isolation, depression, anxiety, and fears. All of these things come with the uncertainties and not knowing where we are in control. We don't control anything. We are just a part of the cosmos that exists. The reality is what is needed, and the question that is paramount in my mind is that the fact, whether we accept it or not, religion does in fact lead us to the gateway to where we need to get to resolve and to dissolve some of those things that we are facing, such as the fears and the uncertainties. This comes only by a power greater than we are and within ourselves. The government can't solve the problem. The scientists, as well as much as they've done, Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, and the likes, even though these are remedies appear to be to help us resolve where we are, but it would not solve the problem. This is not the first time a pandemic has occurred. Problems have always faced humanity and will continue. We will get through this, but yet if we go back, and I have to say it, I'm not the apologist would say in theology, I don't apologize for my belief and what I'm saying because it's based upon the scripture, but being asked to come as a preacher, my belief dictate who I am and what I say. With that said, then the solution to all of our problems is religion, through which we would come to the knowledge of God. And without the knowledge of God, then we are just we're just shooting in the air. We are chasing like a dog chasing his tail. We're running in circles, trying to resolve the bigger problem. The bigger problem that we have is that reality has brought us to where we are, and that is sin. Again, many of us won't acknowledge that, but that's okay. Still, from a religious perspective, we must understand that in order for us to and many of us are saying, even now, those who say they don't believe or have not confessed yet, will say things like, I pray that things get better. Who are you going to pray to? Who are you going to pray to? There's a deity somewhere that has to be. Religion would get you to him, that supernatural power greater than yourself. Somebody who we know that with the resource we have can't resolve, that we feel somehow in our mind, in our subconscious, that there's a power out there. Religion will get us there. So we're needed at this time. Religion will help us resolve the problems. And with that said, the pandemic has changed the culture. It has changed everything, even how we worship. Church won't be the same as it always has been, and it will be something different as we go forward. The normalcy as we know it, the churches in terms is in you. And this is what it has brought us to this point in time. The pandemic has made us realize that we cannot solve and all the problems that we have. And even before the pandemic, the church doors were wide open, and yet you had vacancy. People could go in most edifices and sit in where you want to on Sunday morning. And yet that was before the pandemic. Since the pandemic, I have been preaching the gospel still every Sunday morning at 9 o'clock by way of teleconference. Today, I had to leave early because I did noonday, did it every day, 6 days a week since the pandemic. But yet, after all of the things that have gone, over 500,000 people have died in America, some 32 million worldwide, 32 million cases have been in the U.S. alone, and over 500,000 people have died. And yet still, we talk about, we use everything to try to blame the virus on, but yet we won't talk about sin. Religion talks about this. If you go back to religion, the root cause of all of the problems that we have comes from sin. And sin, if we don't deal with it, will continue to take us deeper into the woes that we are now facing. This is reality, which the world will not accept. But when you ask where are we as relate to religion during the pandemic, that's where we are. We're in denial in many instances. Many of us are in denial. We're trying to find hope in everything but religion. Since the pandemic, ask yourself, how many baptisms have you been to? But then at the same time, look at how many funerals we've had, how many deaths we've had. Gravesides, I've done gravesides, and people still dying. Even with the vaccine, folks won't take the vaccine. And yet we still talk about we want to see things get better. They will not get better if we use the same mind that got us what we are experiencing right now, and that's sin. Then we're going to continue to get the same thing we always got. Chaos, disbelief, confusion, looking for everything that we think that's everything that comes along as a remedy to the solution. But our answer lies in a greater power, and that power is an Almighty God, and that's from a religious perspective.
Thank you very much for those thoughts, Trustee Parker, Reverend Parker, and we appreciate Reverend T.J. Walker's contribution, and especially that special guest he sneaked in. Ms. Harris, we also appreciate your contributions. We could not have done it without such a wonderful panel. It's now 1:59. I am going to stop recording for a second. We have a session at 2 o'clock with that Ms. Emma Rogers is going to be our chair. So I turn the floor over to Ms. Rogers in just 1